surely more relevant information must be considered for such a large project.
Okay, hello. So yes, I'm glad you asked that question, because clearly that was a point that I picked up on in Sue's narrative. So it's factually incorrect. We're not using data from 2001. We are using data that's appropriate for the assessment of these options. So traffic modelling is...
Now, I think it would be very helpful if you could let people speak without interrupting. I know feelings are high, but it would help if you listen to the answers.
Okay, thank you. So I think the traffic modelling numbers we're using are factored up to represent today's volumes of traffic. In my introductory presentation, I was talking about current volumes of traffic that are in the region of 140 at 1,000 typically per day, climbing to 159,000 in the opening year and 163,000 in 2025. Traffic modelling is something clearly we do to look to the future to estimate what traffic figures might be. The model itself is developed as we go through the design process. So when we go into the next stage of development, the model will be updated to reflect real data that we're currently building in our models. So the aspect of 2001 that people were referring to was some origin and destination survey work that was done back then. Moving forward, Higham England are developing a lot of work using telephone data to to develop models in this way for origin and destination.
Thank you very much for that. Second question is Carol Park.
Hello, I'm also a resident of Higham. The Highways England fact sheet on traffic modelling states that its traffic model predicts that without a new crossing, traffic volumes at the existing Dartford crossing will increase to 159,000 per day by 2025. It also states that a new crossing at location C would carry 78,500 vehicles per day in 2025 and would reduce traffic at the Dartford crossing by 14%. Given that 14% of 159,000 is 22,000, these figures indicate that there will be an additional 56,000 vehicles per day travelling to and from Essex. Is it reasonable, therefore, to conclude that the construction of the tunnel would result in an additional 56,000 journeys per day or 20 million journeys per annum that did not previously exist and thereby create additional air pollution and energy consumption?
So yes, so those facts are true. Clearly, they're in our fact sheet, and they explain, what happens to traffic. So yes, there will be extra traffic. That is very clear. In building another crossing, that will enable journeys to take place that currently don't take place. Now, I recognise for some people in the room that might not be palatable. The bottom line is the crossing itself at Dartford has been operating in a congested state for the best part of 15 years. There's suppressed demand to use that crossing. So what does that mean? It actually means not only the crossing itself is congested, but also the A2 and the A13 suffer serious congestion. It means that air pollution is significantly of significant concern on those corridors because often the traffic is standing. Now, in an economy that's growing, we recognise in Ebbsfleet Development Corporation and all the housing growth that's been promoted there. We also recognise other proposals might come on stream, such as Paramount. I've been talking over the last 18 months with all your local authorities, Gravesham and Dartford and so on and so forth, to understand their planning projections in terms of their housing growth and jobs growth. Now, all this economic activity, all this growth in communities requires infrastructure. Now, what we're really saying is the infrastructure doesn't work at the moment, and we need to address the problem.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you for that one, Carol. Okay, I'll come back to that in a moment. Thank you very much for that, Carol. You can tell, can't you, that she's a finance expert. I think there was somebody, yes, sir.
Okay. Ray Stiles from Cliff Woods. I'm concerned about the legacy for our kids. Air pollution has got to be a major consideration here. I spent many years on that M25 and know what a curse it is, being given no other option other to go down the M26 and the Cuxton Road because I couldn't get access to the A2. So this stuff has got to go. If Mr. Cameron says in his manifesto it's all about doing the right thing, 40,000 deaths have got to be considered through air pollution. We don't want Dartford's problem exported down to Gravesham.
Thank you very much for that. Now I'm now going to call Lydia Schubert. I love the name Schubert. It's my second favourite composer. But up here.
Hello, I come from Hermitage Road in Higham. Your forecasts predict that in the opening year, the new crossing is going to carry 78,000 or 78,500 vehicles a day. How many vehicles does your forecast predict will use the proposed junction that's going to link the new motorway style roads into and out of the tunnel with the A226?
Okay, so I can't tell you an absolute number. Now, the reason I can't tell you an absolute number is we're specifically asking questions about local junctions. We don't need a junction onto the A226 for this new road proposal. It could be provided or it could be excluded, and that's why we've got a specific question in the questionnaire about local junctions. The absolute minimal degree of connectivity we want for a new road is clearly onto the A2 or M2, the A13, and then through to the M25.
So sorry, are you saying there's no need for that junction?
Yes, I'm saying there's no need for the junction, but to start a conversation we have to show an illustrative design. Now, when I was talking to local authorities, there was some opinion we gathered that a local junction might be beneficial, but in itself, it doesn't need to be there. All the documents you've seen with drawings of routes and so on, they all come with this label illustrative design. Now the reason we call it the illustrative design is it's of sufficient design maturity to enable us to price it basically and do some traffic modelling around it. But in itself, it's not necessarily the final road detail that will be built. That will be developed in the next stage of design once the government has decided which route to follow.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to call Fiona Bradley. Or it may not be Fiona. It isn't Fiona. It's Keith.
On behalf of Fiona, Keith Bradley, I live in Higham. Going on from about the junctions that might not be happening, but could still happen. Is Highways England aware of the crematorium that's being constructed along the A226? between Higham and Cllr, with this road undoubtedly being used as a rat run and a constant slow funeral cortege using the road. And I was going to make them go at 70 along there. This will produce yet another bottleneck on that top road, causing pollution in the area. Indeed, when there's a problem on the A2, M2, which there's always going to be, all the traffic diverts to the A226. Working on the principle that these junctions that might not appear, but happen to be on the map, I worked it out that we'll never get out of the village. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mayor Keith.
I'm not, sorry, Keith, I'm not sure if there's a question there or a statement.
How are we going to get them?
Well, of course I'm aware of the crematorium. The point about the 226, I just reiterate that the junction doesn't need to be there. And that's why we're asking questions of communities whether they want a junction to be considered or not.
Now going to call, I will call people from the floor. Okay, who are you?
Christine Mitchell.
Where? Oh, right. Okay. Christine.
Right, a question needs to be asked, and it doesn't make any difference to us. We live in Canal Road, Higham. So wherever the transport comes from, we are affected. But are you aware that lorries of over 80 foot come into Higham? Are you aware of that? And they come from Scotland and the north. They will be coming through that tunnel, and if you bring them onto the 226 and you have exit roads onto the 226, are they going to go all the way where Mrs. Oakshott manoeuvred them to come along the Wainscott bypass, or are they going to come down through Higham Village? No, they're going to come through Higham Village, because that is where their fuel and their no, many lorry drivers do not have sat-navs. I know my son is a lorry driver. That is where their management will tell them to come. You bring them through that tunnel, and that is where they will come through this tiny village. You live with that. I'm sorry, I feel really, really sorry for you that you have to bear the burden of all this. But you live with that. And also, you should not have mentioned that day. My mum was in hospital that day. It took my brother 4 hours to get back to Welling in Hertfordshire on that day. That was exceptional. You should not have mentioned that. That was a total and utter exception.
A couple of points there. Of course, I fully understand the sort of emotion in the room, and I'm obviously naturally sorry about your family circumstance. But, you know...
No, it was your mention of it. It was your mention of it.
So, well, I'm sorry for that, but it happens to be a fact that we have, on average, 300 incidents on at that Dartford crossing every year.
Not like that. I'm sorry, not like that.
Well, that's a factual matter. Now, the other concern I think I heard raised was a thought that all these lorries would be going along with 226. Well, actually, they won't. The principal route, clearly, the traffic wants to take is getting from Essex to Kent. A proportion of the traffic is interregional traffic. Clearly, there's some local traffic and there's some sort of international traffic. Now, I've already addressed the question about the junction on the 226. It isn't needed. It might be, communities might value it or they might feel they don't want it. And that's specifically why we're asking that question. But whether the junction be there or not, the majority of the flow will go from the M25 along the new crossing to the M2, A2. Yes, some might exit on the A13. Yes, some might exit onto the A226 if we provide that junction. But the vast majority of those 78,000 vehicle movements will be coming around from the M25 down to the M2 stroke A2. And to think that they'll all be going along the A226 is quite frankly wrong.
Yeah, but 80-foot lorry going down your road, how would you feel?
Yes, I just... Yes, I'm working, okay. I just wanted to ask about the coming out of the tunnel onto the new road and going up towards the A2, M2 and not being able to get onto the A2, A9, the Wainscott bypass because there isn't access. And so any traffic coming through the tunnel that wishes to go to the Medway City Estate, the Isle of Grain and out on the Hoop Peninsula won't be able to get onto the Wainscott bypass.
Okay, so of course this is quite right against that illustrative design. Now clearly it is an illustrative design. If we don't have a junction with the 226, which I've already explained, we don't need that. We'd obviously alter the junction should the eastern link be chosen by government to the Wainscott bypass so you can cater to those movements. The movements ultimately we need to cater for are those movements coming along the new crossing, exiting onto the A2 and M2, either east or west, and clearly make provision for those movements on the Wainscott Northern bypass to service the Medway towns. Our proposals as they were drawn up show that movement on the A226, but clearly we make alternative provision if we don't have the junction with the 226. I come back to the purpose of the question in the questionnaire around junctions. We need to understand what local communities want and local business wants in drawing up. Now, just one final thought to leave with on this point. Having a conversation with a blank sheet of paper is a difficult conversation to start. So we have to start somewhere. And this is why we bring an illustrative design to you. This is the whole purpose of having consultation. I do recognise in the room there's high emotion. I do recognise that you know, it comes out of the blue maybe to some, because clearly the earlier consultation was around concept more than that. But the whole reason to have these conversations is to understand local opinion, to give you an opportunity to ask questions of me, to feed that feedback in, and then ultimately the government can make an informed decision. That's why I'd urge you to make your consultation responsible.
Thank you. I've noticed to take something from the floor, and I've seen Robin Theobald, so if you would like to ask your question, Robin.
Thank you. Robin Theobald, I'm from Sean. Mr. Parks, we all recognise that there's a problem at Dartford. You have in effect, I think, defined your area, the area from which you wanted a response, because you held your consultation events there, i.e. over Essex and over North West Kent. Why then have you sent out questionnaires or sent out emails to all the DartTag users and other areas outside of this area? Surely they want something done about Dartford, but by replying to that consultation they're simply going to say that they want Route C, which I think is rather biasing the response. I say, you're not just consulting
and as Highways England, we effectively operate and manage the highway network across the country, the major highway network for you, for the community, for society at large. If you drive a car, you'll use motorways, no doubt. You'll use the major trunk roads. Those are the assets that we manage. Now, of course, it's vitally important to reach out to local communities, such as I'm doing tonight. We've made lots of efforts to reach out to you. I've written letters to 260,000 of you. We've had 24 days of public information events. Me and my team have spoken to over 13,000 people in face-to-face conversations explaining our proposals. The fact that there's a room full tonight, possibly 120, 130 of you, I'm speaking to you now about our proposals, so I'm reaching out. Now, of course, you're representing the neighbour community, equally or important to us to reach out to. But also I've got a user community, and you understand it's only sensible that I reach out to those users as well. We all have a part to play here. We all use the infrastructure that the government provide. We are trying to find the best solution in an intangible problem that is dark.
You didn't want to come here, did you?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that.
I'm sorry that you feel you have to make such remarks. Of course, in my opening remarks, I was more than happy to meet with you tonight, and that's why I'm here.
Consultation's been high or short.
We held 24 days of consultation. There was consultation event the other down the road at Rochester. There was one at Shoreham. Both communities
Not George, which is most... You did Maidstone, but you're written straight through.
Okay, let's not have too many questions from there. I think, Mr. Potts, you will realise there is very high emotion in this particular village, not least because it is the largest village in the area and the largest village that is affected by these proposals. And I think that people in this area are particularly upset that it wasn't felt right and proper to hold a full consultation here, and this has been put on at the end of the consultation period. I think there is high emotion here, and I think we have to respect that. I'm now going to call Brian Dutton, and you'll realise that my other microphone has collapsed on me, by the way.
I'm Brian Dutton from Beach Grove. Why is it not possible to build tunnels from end to end? Put as much as it can go in the tunnel, from the A2 right round over into Essex. Savings on purchasing land, housing, companies etc. would go a long way to covering the cost. Also, subject to geological conditions, could run a more direct route. The spoils are always wanted for reclaiming land, buildings, etc. For example, London Crossrail tunnelling, which must be far more complex because of the existing infrastructure, and they have boring machines required. In actual fact, in Kent Messenger that week ago, Paul Carter started to think about putting more of it in a tunnel. Thank you.
Of course, technically, we could build a tunnel of 20 miles long or 15 miles long, whatever it would need to be. The one thing Highways England is charged to do is look after your tax pound. Now, you might smile at that remark, but there is truth in that. Now, why am I saying this? This proposal ultimately has to be signed off by the Treasury. Now, the government asked of Highways England to look for options that not cheap, madam, look for options. I don't think we can talk because 4 billion has been cheap, but look for options that give good benefits for each pound spent. And the target we aim for is for every £1 spent, £4 of economic benefit. Now that is actually quite challenging on road projects. There's very few that achieve those sorts of beneficial outcomes just because of the nature of the infrastructure being very expensive. The three routes that we're looking at, routes 2, 3 and 4, with either the southern or western link, all have benefit ratios in excess of 3. In terms of the cost, they're in the region of £4 billion. Now, you mentioned why can't we tunnel it all? If we were to tunnel it all, those costs would go up by half as much as I suspect. And at that sort of cost, the government would have serious considerations about whether it wanted to spend that money here. Remember, the pot is only so large, and there's no absolute guarantee that this proposal will ultimately build. At the end of the day, the government will have to decide whether it wants to advance this proposal. The first indication we might get of that is at the end of this consultation, when the government may choose to make a decision around a route. But ultimately, as the professional body charged with operating the network, we have to find solutions that are affordable to government, that give the right sort of economic benefits, and address the actual transport problem that we face.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to call Brian Dutton, and then I'll take some from the floor. Sorry, not Brian Dutton. You've just had your go. It's Big Brainy. Okay. And then I'll call some from areas over there. And then I'll call some from the floor.
Good evening, I'm Nick Braid, I'm a Higham resident. Lower Thames crossing option C versus option A at Dartford. Option A at Dartford was probably the worst option out of all the ones you looked at that you could have come up with. If you go back through your documentation, you had option A14 and option A8. These are both long bore tunnels that start from north of junction 30 and south of junction 2. Both of these options, in your estimates, were around one was 6.6 billion, the other one was 6.9 billion. Now I researched this, and John Cubit's also researched this, and he mentioned it on Thursday evening. Your estimates, worldwide comparison, were double anybody else's. One of them in Holland was actually yours was 4 times the cost of their tunnel. The tunnel in Paris is a 2-tier tunnel which was built for almost half what your estimated costs are. And yet, and also, the filtration system in the 2 long-bore tunnels will benefit Dartford from their exhaust, which will be pure air because of the way it cleans the air when it comes out the tunnel. Because they reticulate from north of junction 30 and south of junction 2, that will alleviate congestion around the filter roads of the Dartford crossing, thereby reducing congestion, thereby reducing pollution. You won't have to have the extra work in Thurrock of building roads and the extra work in Kent of building roads. There was an engineer in Kent that advertised an article on Kent Online that also backed up this option. And you keep on alluding to figures of your estimated costs. When it suits you for option C, you use the lowest figure, which is 4.3 billion. When you talk about option A, use the highest figure, which makes it very